This is RJ Avery, broker here at Flex Group Real Estate. Going to talk to you a little bit about how this NAR settlement is going to affect home buyers. I've been working with home buyers for 17 years, and the two industries I've been involved in my whole life are restaurant industry and real estate. To me, these industries are very similar in the fact that sometimes you don't get a good tip, sometimes you get no tip. And that reality comes into working with buyers because sometimes the buyer actually closes and does what they say they're going to do, but many times buyers change their mind. They end up going to a different market, they end up renting. And sometimes, unfortunately, buyers will totally take you out, waste your time as an agent, and just have you drive around knowing they're not going to buy a home from you and ultimately go to another agent to write a contract. We've seen it happen multiple times, and there's many ways that us as agents try to protect our time in order to not happen to us. One of these ways is the buyer representation agreement. This is something that has been in play forever. It's something that personally I've never used because I've always had other ways of working with clients and telling them, hey, I don't need a buyer's representation agreement to work with you. I'm going to explain to you how I do things, and then ultimately I'm going to work with you. If a buyer chose to disappear, which some have, it is what it is. At the end of the day, I did my job of trying to provide service, and the reality is that there are plenty of great buyers out there that I have worked with, and it makes my job work out in the long run. Much like when serving tables or bartending, those ones that stiff you typically get made up for by the ones that give you amazing tips, or when it comes to real estate, those clients who are a joy to work with and make it easy on you. So before this lawsuit, someone called me to look at a house. The main questions I would ask them as an agent, and if you call an agent and you're looking for someone who is professional and knows what they're doing, and you're not just looking to waste an agent's time and see a house real quick, if they don't ask you these questions, think about getting another agent because they are desperate. Those questions are you working with an agent yet? That's a big one, because the agents who don't want to ask that question don't want to know. Are you pre-approved, or do you know a budget yet? And do you have an idea of the area you want to be in and a general description of the house that you want? Now, I'm not saying you have to have an answer to all those questions. You don't have to necessarily be working with the lender or any of that stuff yet. You obviously don't have to be working with the realtor. We want to know if you are or you aren't, as well as you don't necessarily have to know what you're looking for. But these are 3 questions that you should expect a seasoned realtor to ask you. Now, before this lawsuit, after asking these questions, if I got satisfactory answers from those, I would definitely meet a client out at a house or a couple houses, show them a few houses before I got into talking about how it worked, representation, how commissions were paid, etc. For this lawsuit, any property you found on, say, Realtor.com or Zillow, the mass majority of those offered a commission to be paid for by a buyer's agent that a buyer's agent could find on the MLS once they look for it in a category that we could only see that was not public data. That commission, on average, was 3%. That's not a set rate. There was definitely lower commissions and higher commissions. And ultimately, this is how buyer's agents got paid. With this lawsuit, what is changing is now seller's agents cannot advertise how much a seller is willing to pay in commission in the MLS, but that does not mean that sellers can't pay commission, and that many agents, at least good listing agents, are still going to be educating their sellers to pay commissions to buyer's agents. So before this lawsuit, if you were to call, say, one of the big 5 agencies, what might have happened when you went in to sit down for their consultation is they would have put a buyer's representation agreement in front of you. And in that agreement, they would have stated where you were looking for a house and all these things. And more than likely, they would have wrote in there that you were going to pay 3% for their fees, with the thing in mind that, hey, every seller is going to be paying 3%. But by signing that buyer's representation agreement, what they didn't a lot of times, or at least most of the times, gloss over is, say you go look at a house where they're paying 2% commission. Well, now technically you signed something that says you will pay 1% more to your agent for their services. This is something that just doesn't quite sit well with home buyers. And personally, as an agent who did not necessarily sweat the small stuff and chase every dollar, I chose to ultimately never really have buyer's representation agreements, and at the end of the day, take the commission that was offered. Yes, in some cases, this was 2.5%, 2%, and in the case of the NAR, it was 1%, which is horrible, but still, I was willing to do it to make sure that the thing was as smooth as it could possibly be for my buyer, and that they did not have to come out of pocket any more than they already had to. So what's changing now is, legally, not only are MLSs not going to be able to advertise how much commission they're willing to pay, if you as a buyer want to view a house, an agent is going to have you sign a buyer's representation agreement before they show you that house, unless you are visiting open houses. So if you call an agent to show you a house, ultimately they're going to have to address this and come up and talk about compensation. This, in my opinion, is going to put a lot of people off because a lot of people don't want to sign a long-term agreement with somebody they just met, which is a big reason why I never had these agreements in the first place and why I would show people houses and get to know them in that first meeting and see if it was a fit. And many times, not all the time, it was, and it worked out for me. There's gonna be a myriad of ways that brokerages handle this buyer's representation. And I will be upfront and honest, I think one of the biggest things that's going to be bad for us as agents is how companies like Zillow and Opendoor are going to basically do this, which means that they're going to have employed agents that they pay a small amount to openly just open doors for them. So as a buyer, you may be really enticed to call Zillow and have them open doors for you, and then ultimately they're going to try to sell you on their services, but I would be very wary of anybody who works for one of these large companies. Because number one, a lot of these large companies are selling the houses that they're... So now there's going to be a myriad of ways that brokerages are going to handle this buyer's representation. All I can tell you about the way that I'm going to handle it here at Flex Group is I'm going to stick to the idea that ultimately I'm going to do everything I can to keep you, the buyer, from coming out of pocket for commission. As well, I guarantee you I will be on the cutting edge of low cost. As well, I guarantee you I'll be on the cutting edge of low cost a la carte services like my $1,000 virtual buyer's agent and contract negotiation package. This will be a package for people who, say, for instance, go to an open house and you find a house that you really, really want, and that's the one you love. You can call me. I will run you the comps for that property, send you all the comps that have come up in the past 3 to 6 months, and then I will help you write that contract and get it submitted as professionally as possible to an agent. In that case, being represented, if they are offering a commission that is up to 3%, you stand to have me be able to rebate you that 3% commission towards buy down points or closing costs, or just negotiate it off for the price by telling them, the selling agent, hey, I'm not taking a commission on this, but they do want this amount of money off the price. And instead of, as a buyer, you coming to them by yourself, wanting representation and a listing agent to help you write your contract, because I guarantee you that is going to be a point of contention for a lot of agents out there who used to be willing to do intermediary status, no problem, because there was commission paid on both sides. But at this point in time, you're not going to see listing agents being willing to take the legal risk of representing a buyer as well as not getting paid at that time to do intermediary status. So instead of going to the selling agent and asking for a discount but wanting them to do a job, you'll be enlisting somebody for $1,000 to do a job for you. As well, we're going to have $5,000 and $10,000 upfront, show you houses, represent your contract from front to back, and ultimately rebate you the rest of the commission programs as well. The bottom line is, it's Flex Group Real Estate. So feel free to reach out to me directly. Let's talk about what you're trying to accomplish, and let's get it done and save you money and not sacrifice service. Because at Flex Group Real Estate, your bottom line is our top priority.